Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Janine Adams from the Nelson Mandela University. I'm Deputy Director of our Institute for Coastal and Marine Research. And I work across the science policy practice continuum, working and interested in the conservation and management of estuaries. Today I will speak on the co-design of estuary conservation and management measures. And I acknowledge my co-authors, Laura van Niekerk and Susan Taljaard from the CSR. In South Africa, we have about a 3,000 kilometer coastline with 300 estuaries distributed along the coast, from our tropical east coast to our warm temperate south coast, up to the cool temperate west coast. We have some very rural, undeveloped areas along our coastline, but we also have some very populated city centres indicated in these red dots. So we have a variety of different stakeholders that we work with on particular estuaries. Because of the diversity of our coastline, we have a number of different types of estuaries: estuarine bays, lakes, river mouths, those that are closed to the sea and those that are open. And estuaries thus have very unique biodiversity that are worthy of conservation. Estuaries have a number of ecosystem services. For example, they form important nursery habitats. Because of our high energy coastline, fish move into estuaries to grow where they can be protected and sheltered and where there is an available food supply. Estuaries are also important habitats for carbon sequestration and storage, for flood regulation and storm protection, and because of the high energy coastline, they act as safe bathing areas. Estuarine plants and animals, they are important for food, fuel, and building resources. And then everybody wants to live on the coastline and have an estuary with a beautiful view. So in terms of property values, these dramatically increase with beautiful scenic views and vistas. However, estuaries are threatened by development, particularly in our semi-arid country. Changes in freshwater inflow due to water abstraction has caused changes in the downstream estuaries. There's a deterioration in water quality because of inputs from agriculture, as well as wastewater treatment works and stormwater runoff. And in some cases, there's intense resource utilization. So these multiple pressures can only be reduced through collaboration, through co-design of conservation and management measures. So we have worked very closely over the last 25 years with a number of our government authorities where we've co-designed different management policies. So, for example, we've developed estuary management plans with our Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment. And this has allowed for implementation of the Integrated Coastal Management Act. We've also worked with the South African National Biodiversity Institute on the National Biodiversity Assessment, and with our Department of Water and Sanitation on the ecological water requirements of estuaries, as well as monitoring estuaries. And this allows for implementation of the National Water Act. So we developed the National Estuary Management Protocols, and this was after about 15 years of experience. These were co-designed with various stakeholders who've been involved in estuary conservation and management. And the National Estuary Management Protocol says that the estuaries of South Africa should be managed in a sustainable way that benefits the current and future generations. We need to conserve, manage, and enhance our estuaries. We must maintain or restore ecological integrity. We must work together cooperatively to protect a representative sample of estuaries. We must promote awareness, education, and training, and to minimize the potential detrimental impacts of predicted climate change. So managing estuaries is a very complex process. Estuaries can be considered as complex socio-ecological systems, which requires multiple actors to become involved in their management and conservation. So the National Estuary Management Protocol, to ensure the implementation of estuary management plans, we also wrote the guidelines for the development and implementation of these plans. And this came through a very long history of research and of practice of working together in multidisciplinary groups. So interactions with stakeholders and local communities, how best to do this? Sometimes it's just to find a coordinated group in the area. So we've had success working through schools or environmental groups or church groups. Seemingly in some areas where people don't seem to be organized into groups, you'll always find a nearby school. And for example, in one of our studies, we're using a primary school and working closely with them on water level monitoring, collecting of water samples, and this is for a whole catchment to coast water management project. And school children are very excited to be involved in an actual research and implementation project. In many of our rural areas in the country, here land is communal, and it's sometimes very difficult to find the representative groups of stakeholders and the local communities. But in some areas, the communities are very well organized, and they provide input through ward councillors. Estuary advisory forums are developed for the implementation of estuary management plans, and these can consist of a wide group of people. In fact, these need to represent all stakeholders. So in one study, and just to look at the different colors of this horrendogram, you can see about 10 different colors. This represented all the stakeholders in one particular area, or the people who were interested and affected by what went on in the estuary and surrounding environment. And this study by Honoré Roos, the perspectives of stakeholders on engagement around benefits and use of the wilderness and Swartkops lakes, it showed that 10 meta-identities of different stakeholders or groups could be identified. These were associations, businesses, charity organizations, conservancies, government departments, informal groupings, learning, educational institutions, other stakeholder projects, and spiritual groups and sport clubs. So you could identify these were the sort of different meta-identities with multiple different interested and affected parties or stakeholders below this. So in order to develop an effective estuary management plan, an estuary advisory forum, these different stakeholders need to be representative. And so an estuary management plan should be co-designed with all these different people involved. And although this seems like a daunting task, it just takes time and communication and building trust between everybody so that you can all work together for the improvement in the conservation and management of estuaries. We've worked closely with our Department of Water Affairs on the ecological water requirements of downstream systems. In a semi-arid country such as ours, water is in great demand and limits development. And so integrated water resource management also involves multiple actors. So we developed a method together with stakeholders and the Department of Water Affairs, and we applied the same method to almost half of South Africa's estuaries. We've also participated in the National Biodiversity Assessment. This takes new information every 5 years and thus involves multiple sectors of society, government, and research organizations. And what the National Biodiversity Assessment does is delineate estuaries in the country. It assesses the pressures, status, trends, and benefits, and inputs are made for conservation and biodiversity plans. It thus gives direction for the management of pressures and highlights estuaries in need of restoration. Because it's done almost every 5 years, it's an update of available information. And so it requires input from all sectors of society. So quite exciting opportunities and activities at the moment are related to the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, which is it's a global call for action to restore our degraded ecosystems. It's ecosystem restoration for people, nature, and climate. Restoration is a wonderful opportunity to get multiple people involved, and it also provides opportunities to celebrate successes both globally and nationally, because we can celebrate conservation successes through restoration. We can ignite hope and inspire the next generation of thinkers and change makers. And so this example of a restoration success came from the local stakeholders. It was the people who lived on this specific island. They observed an invasive plant spreading and growing across the estuary. They got hold of us, the researchers, as well as the authorities, and together with the South African National Biodiversity Institute and the Early Invasive Species Program, we were able to remove this grass from the estuary. But if it wasn't for the locals noting the changes in their system and getting hold of the responsible people, this would not have been such a success story. So the Great Bruck Estuary and the eradication of the invasive grass, Baltano terniflora, actually provides a national prospect of eradication of an invasive alien plant. In our country, we have many different invasive plants and animals. And this was a success study of various organizations and the local communities working together to improve the conservation and management of this particular system. We've developed a socio-ecological systems framework for restoration, which links estuary state and estuary health through ecosystem services to the state of the societal system. And this applies an adaptive management framework where you have a restoration goal, a management action that is implemented and monitored in a strategic adaptive management cycle. And we've looked at this particularly in terms of salt marsh restoration, because salt marshes are threatened in the country and they provide multiple ecosystem services. So that's often through one intervention or restoration activity, you can improve multiple ecosystem services. And these would include water quality regulation, providing waterbird habitats, carbon storage and sequestration, habitats for aquatic invertebrates, and nurseries for fish species. Through these ecosystem services and the improvement of these, it then contributes to an improvement in societal health. At this particular system, a single restoration action, such as improving hydrological connectivity through removal of old berms and upstream barriers, would restore biodiversity and improve water quality downstream. So in our country, we've identified the restoration actions needed for salt marsh restoration. Restoration is an exciting place as it provides innovation, opportunities for innovation through transdisciplinary research approaches. It links different disciplines and it focuses on real-world system problems. And co-design is key in restoration, so that we involve various disciplines: economics, education, oceanography, statistics, zoology. So in terms of training, it's also very important. Socio-ecological restoration for estuaries can also provide potentials for jobs. And this is very important where we are trying to grow the blue economy. So in the catchment, you can have a variety of pollution monitors or people responsible for waste recycling, or the maintenance of artificial wetlands, riparian zone maintenance, extension officers, environmental education officers, tourism guides, social and natural scientists, and water quality managers. However, in order to implement socio-ecological restoration and co-design of restoration activities and opportunities, we need to develop the right sort of people, and that is why capacity building is important. So in my job, we work with various undergrad and postgraduates to ensure that they can work across disciplines with all sectors of society, as they will be responsible for future co-design. We provide students with various opportunities and also opportunities to work with practitioners and managers. And one way we do that is through a short learning program on estuary management in South Africa. It involves all stakeholders in a specific area. They're part of the course and presenting the available knowledge on a system. It involves the relevant authorities and postgraduate students, and in this way, knowledge is transferred across the Science Policy Practice Forum. So, bridging the science policy practice divide, we need to implement the knowledge to action cycle, and this is done by building and maintaining strong relationships and trust between researchers, government departments, and other stakeholders. In our country, a key challenge going forward is innovative approaches to fund and develop capacity, and in my interest areas, that's for estuaries, especially in poorly resourced local municipalities. Estuaries in this talk has shown that they are complex systems. They need transdisciplinary teams, and we can encourage scientific excellence and management through collaboration. We can provide, by working together, the next generation who will provide innovation and co-designing in ensuring the effective conservation and management of estuaries. Thank you, and I'd like to thank all my students and collaborators, and please do follow us on social media.